Hi friends, welcome to the NPTEL course Strategy and Technology, a practical primer. We are in week 3 with the theme of strategy execution. In this lecture, which is the 15th in the series, we cover the topic of strategic management. The 5 decades from the 1970s to the 2000s and the current decade of 2020s represent certain characteristic period in the evolution of strategic management, thought and practice in companies. I feel it a fortune that I have been involved in strategic planning from the 1970s till date. It has been a big transformation in the nature and context of strategic planning and now strategic management over these 6 decades. The first was the LRP era of the 1970s. There was a lot of excitement in projecting an incremental 5-year future in a highly regulated environment that obtained there. The theme was of simple incrementalism. That is, if we did X last year, we would like to do 1.1x or 1.05x, like that. The 1980s was the competitive strategy era. That was when Porter came up with his theory of competitive strategy. A new wave of conceptual and analytical constructs began appearing on the horizon, and they drove competitive strategy planning. The emphasis was on product market configurations. In fact, that was a construct popularized by Ansoff earlier. The 1990s were the liberalization era, especially in India. At that point of time, the industry began understanding the rudiments of true globalization. The emphasis of strategic planning during the 1990s was on overcoming economic and industrial vulnerabilities and building certain growth sinews. The 2000s was the era of prospecting. During this period, companies began exploring growth opportunities. They discovered new growth potential and they tried to accomplish through organic and inorganic ventures, joint ventures, strategic alliances, and even M&A. The spirit in the 2000s was on exploring and achieving a global perch by the Indian companies. The 2010s was the digital era, driving growth through expansion and diversification and discovering new business models based on digital technologies. It was also the rise of the startup era in India. Achieving global competitiveness in certain industries was the principal plank of strategic management during that period. The 2020s promises to be the transformation era. Industries and companies would be transformed like never before through breakthrough scientific and technological developments. This era has the spirit of preparing for major discontinuities and transformations. This has been the evolution of strategic management as a discipline, from simple incremental annual planning through exploration of growth opportunities and having a 360-degree view of all the company functions, all the externalities, and now to the visualization of required transformations in the industries and in the companies. What is so special about strategic management in the 2020s? There are 3 key drivers. While the established management principles would continue to hold sway, we are going to witness new insights, new constructs from science and technology as developed at a rapid pace across the world. Along with that will be a new evolving management toolkit which would be necessary for industrial transformations and corporate transformations. As companies grapple with the challenges and opportunities of industrial transformations, strategic management must focus on leading companies in a world that is globalized yet protectionist, even as it will continue to be consumption driven but becoming more respectable of sustainability and governance. Watch these combinations. The world will be more globalized, but it will also be more protectionist. The world will continue to be consumption driven, but it will be much more respectful of sustainability and governance. Therefore, there are going to be additional opportunities for strategic management and also additional challenges and constraints. Strategy, structure, execution timeframes are going to change. The labeling that exists that strategy is for the long term, structure needs certainty, and execution requires immediate focus is true partially, but may not be held under all circumstances. So strategy would change from annual development to annual development with quarterly review. In fact, it could be even more frequent in certain industries and in certain change situations. Structure used to be rigid and formal. It will be changed to flexible and adaptive structural configuration. Execution was always seen to be synonymous with what is to be achieved in the immediate term, and that too based on budgets. While that would continue to hold good, it will be additionally another dimension that would hold sway, an open feedback loop to course correct strategy on a continuous basis. The overall canvas has already changed, in my opinion, from the firm in an industry to a firm shaping an ecosystem. Whichever firm takes the lead proactively in shaping the ecosystem is likely to be the future winner of the future industrial landscape. Of the three elements, obviously each is as important as the other, but the process of aligning strategy, structure and execution in dynamic responsiveness to a changing environment will be the critical role of a leader. I want to illustrate this through the drug discovery and development pathway. Discovery and development of new drugs is a very complex process full of scientific endeavors and scientific challenges, clinical trials. It is in fact a multi-year endeavor that requires the leadership to deploy strategy, structure and execution that reflects high competencies. If you see end to end, a typical drug discovery activity takes place during a long time horizon of 5 to 15 years. It starts with target, disease or indication. That is the identification of the need phase. Then there would be target validation, which is discovery of the pathways and the treatment method. Whole lot of ideas for drugs will be generated during this phase. Out of those, the lead molecules will be identified. That is the drug discovery phase, which will include medicinal chemistry for a number of molecules and preliminary biological screening. It is the screening of ideas stage. Then you will get the lead candidate, which is likely to have the required medicinal effect through the required pathway without adverse effects in terms of impacting the other good pathways. The lead candidate has to undergo proof of concept in animal studies. Then comes the product development phase, where the API process will be iteratively improved, the formulation will be, the impurities will be analyzed and minimized, the safety profile will be further enhanced. During this phase, a number of clinical trials will also start beginning to happen. And finally, when the clinical trials are successful, the commercialization would happen. In parallel to this, therefore, there is a whole set of preclinical and clinical value chain. Preclinical will be 1 to 2 years, and human trials phase 1, phase 2 and phase 3 would be easily 5 to 10 years. After phase 1 trials in healthy volunteers, phase 2 trials in patients and phase 3 larger random double-blinded global studies, the product will get approval if all the parameters are met. After the launch, you have post-marketing surveillance. This is the vast canvas of drug discovery and drug development. However, to be able to do that, the strategy, the structure and execution must be in close coordination, because at any point of time, new scientific knowledge may come up, throwing some questions on the existing pathways or bringing up new pathways. Whole rigor of impurity profiling could change, which will impact the way the lead candidates are developed. All of this requires strategy, structure and execution on the part of the scientific team. Similarly, when you want to do preclinical and clinical trials which are global in nature, you really require project management expertise, understanding how the product has been positioned and getting it executed in clinical trials. That said, even this kind of lengthy process can be compressed if human resilience is brought to fore in terms of human resolve. As the development of vaccine for COVID-19 demonstrated, unprecedented developments can happen in an accelerated manner when human resolve and technological innovation combine to deliver. Let's take the example of Operation Warp Speed. This was a phrase coined by President Trump's administration to fast-track vaccine development. Operation Warp Speed is a striking example of rapid execution through single-minded focus, resourcing, and deployment. Although initially budgeted by the US Congress for about $10 million in May 2020, Operation Warp Speed had spent $12.4 billion by mid-December 2020 on vaccine developers for the combined costs of R&D and pre-approval manufacturing for millions of vaccine doses. Pfizer, however, developed the vaccine through its own resources. Let's be clear that India did all of this through its Bharat Biotech ICMR seeded Covaxin vaccine as well. So it is possible for us to have billions of dollars supporting the technological development at a rapid pace. We may also not have billions of dollars but may have only millions of rupees, yet develop an effective vaccine. What are the key drivers? The key drivers are human resolve and technological innovation. So when you look at Operation Warp Speed, either in India or in the United States, the vision and mission are prompted by a passion to bring a safe and effective vaccine for COVID-19 in less than a year. The strategy was to secure the best possible technology that is capable of rapid scale-up. Some companies decided that mRNA vaccine technology is the best possible technology. A, it has been proven in certain other fields. B, it was capable of rapid scale-up because COVID-19 was seen to be a global pandemic. And if one is able to produce as many doses as possible in millions and billions, that would be helpful for the humanity. So mRNA vaccine technology was chosen. Someone else chose adenovirus vaccine technology, and another company chose the inactivated vaccine technology. Fourth company chose a plasmid DNA technology. So each company had a different scientific and technological strategy. But all the companies created structures, special organizational units to develop, manufacture and distribute the vaccines. Execution was rapid, but it was parallel instead of being sequential. Parallel and proactive processing of various steps on an end-to-end basis ensured that the results were visible within 10 months and a product could be approved from each manufacturer within a period of 12 months by the US FDA after rigorous scrutiny. The goals of the project to develop, manufacture and distribute hundreds of millions of COVID-19 vaccine doses by the end of 2020 were initially criticized as being unrealistic based on decades of experience in developing viral infection vaccines, which normally require years or decades for assuring that the chosen vaccine will not be toxic and will have adequate efficacy. In the case of COVID-19 vaccine, however, effective vaccines were made by BioNTech in Germany and Pfizer, a partnership not funded by Operation Warp Speed, and Moderna funded by Warp Speed. These were approved by US FDA in December 2020. This established an exceptionally fast development and approval timeline for vaccines to be granted emergency marketing. Even today, when the world is facing the Omicron threat, companies are going the extra mile at a rapid pace to tweak the vaccines within the period of 3 months to make sure that they are fully effective against Omicron, the new variant. So what does that teach us? It teaches us that business strategy, organizational structure and operating model could vary, and that variation based on the context and the product or service could lead to impactful results. So to generalize from this example, we can say that business strategy can be executed only with a good organization structure and a good business operating model. It is also called the business structure or business model. Companies which belong to the same industry may use different operating models. A cement company may stick to the conventional method of distributing cement through bags. Another company may choose to have pre-mixed concrete trucks on a massive scale. Another company may rely on creating batching plants all across the nation. A company may like to spread itself in terms of location-based cement companies, mini cement plants. Another company may decide to have centralized cement manufacturing, but a very efficient and agile distribution structure. So the business strategies and business models could vary from company to company within the same industry. But the overall changes happen in a particular direction depending on the context. So when you look at banking today, we had branch banking and we continue to have branch banking, but it's going to change to digital banking. What kind of structural change could be triggered by this? We need to have right-sized branch network. We also need strengthened digital network. Even a leading private bank had to face RBI structures in terms of the inadequacy of IT infrastructure, and certain card operations had to be kept on hold because of the structural inadequacy of the IT network. Therefore, we need to do two things simultaneously. One, right sizing the branch network. That doesn't mean downsizing necessarily, but strengthening the digital network also has to happen simultaneously. Let's look at the energy industry. We used to have end-to-end utilities. It moved to separate generation and distribution. That would require new corporate structures and grid and network restructuring. Pharmaceuticals traditionally was based on in-house R&D. It has moved already to acquired R&D and startups. This requires changes in the financing structure of startups as well as the big pharma R&D. Automobiles, an example brought many times over in these lectures, is moving from IC engines to electric power packs. What does it require? Technology redevelopment, technology campuses dedicated to electric vehicle development, and industry restructuring, including the ecosystem change. Pesticides will move from chemicals to biopesticides. Is a matter of time. It will require industry restructuring. Retail will move from in-store to home delivery. When this happens, logistics industry will be very diversified to captive as well as outsourced. These changes support what was told in 1962 by Alfred Chandler, that strategy and structure are interrelated, and most times structure will follow strategy. Irrespective of the nature of industry, firms will require strategic shifts at some point of time or the other. Each strategic shift will require a reconfigured organizational structure, reconfigured business structure to execute the new strategy effectively. In fact, the organizational structure would follow the business structure. It doesn't mean that there would not be surprises. To cope with surprises, we need to have flexibility in trilogy components of strategy, structure, and execution, rather than attempting to make them risk-proof. When strategy, structure, and execution are aligned with due flexibility and continuous calibration, firms can cope successfully with surprises. At times, strategic assumptions go wrong. Structures could be inflexible and even misaligned, and execution may falter or face unanticipated competition. There are examples of that. Vodafone Idea, it made wrong assumptions on 2G, made wrong assumptions on voice revenues, tax arrears, competition, investment requirements. Therefore, it was under severe pressure when Jio came into the market with significant upfront investments and very competitive plans for data as well as for voice. Tata Steel, which went on a global acquisition initiative, had to face changed economic conditions such as steel demand cycle, Brexit, workforce issues. Tata Motors also faced unanticipated volatility due to Brexit, US-China trade war, tariffs that were consequent to that, and the China market slowing down. Now, in some cases, managements deliberately did not take into account good assumptions or safe assumptions. They bet on wrong assumptions for immediate revenue requirements, but those proved to be the nemesis later on. Whereas some companies were well managed, they made bold, ambitious moves for globalization, but they found environment changing unexpectedly. Similar situations existed in airliners, hotels, and tourism. The hotel and hospitality industry in particular was impacted by COVID-19 pandemic, which curtailed travel, tourism beyond any expectation. Once in a lifetime pandemic adversities such as COVID-19 require anticipation and more. Companies need to build resilience to cope with adversities and possess the agility to respond effectively. Every passage through a crisis situation teaches lessons which need to be incorporated in the strategy and structure. The wave 2 of Delta taught many lessons for Indian corporations and Indian administrative systems. And these lessons are getting incorporated in handling the new wave, if at all, would arise through Omicron variant. So coping with surprises and handling surprises with anticipation and learnings is an important aspect of crisis management and proactive leadership in the face of crisis. To be able to cope with surprises, it is not possible that existing structures or established structures would be fully adequate. There will always be internal and external variables that cannot be forecast, and these could impact the starting assumptions of any venture, whether it is organic or organic. Depending on the surprise, strategy, structure and execution would need to be creatively modified, and they also need to have different levels of priority to manage the surprise. So how would we meet these kinds of surprising situations? Would one team be sufficient, or would more than one team be required? Would you require cross-functional teams? Would we require teams which are assembled and disassembled depending upon the crisis? My suggestion is that we should have 3 types of team, because the business must continue as it is, as it was, and as it would need to be. And that can be done by operating functions. So we need an operating team, which is the regular organizational team, which is the core execution team that should run the operations continuously to meet strategies and goals. Then we have a flexibility team, because the crisis has struck us unexpectedly. So we need to have flexibility and agility in the organization. And this team is best suited to cope with surprises and re-strategize. Finally, we should have resilience team. We need to have the amplitude in the organization to be able to meet the pressures that the environment will pose, or the vacuum the environment creates in terms of new opportunities. The resilience team creates long-term restructuring plans for the firm and implements them to build resilience and help the organization cope with the adversities. These 3 teams must work together. They have to remain interconnected all the time. The greater the arc area of interconnection, the greater would be the effectiveness of the organization. Rather than an elaborate organizational bureaucracy, a small leadership group can often provide the drive for a successful trilogy, as I have highlighted. Tata Motors' success in driving future growth through JLR was an indication that when teams assemble together in this format, they can cope with surprises, they can make sure that mutual support is available from different parts of the arm, and strategy, structure and execution, when run in impactful alignment, any decision despite the environmental uncertainties could eventually turn out to be good and appropriate. While doing any organizational restructuring, we have to keep in mind that organizations do have limitations. Every organization over time suffers from at least 4 limitations. They get enhanced or they get worsened as the strategy becomes more expansive and complex. As you start getting into the strategy, more new business models, more new businesses, more new products, the complexity of organization design will be rendered higher, and the availability of capabilities in the existing organization will become fewer. This is a natural process. These limitations are natural occurrences and need to be handled by leaders. So when you look at this organizational redesign, you have to recognize the 4 limitations that would occur. 1, outdated roles. 2, outdated processes. 3, outdated people. And 4, outdated metrics. So every function gets updated over time to create new products and services. Roles need to be continuously updated. There was a time when only sales was representative of the process of selling and servicing. But over a period of time, sales and marketing came to be defined as the larger role. And within that, several value chains, such as marketing research value chain, advertising and sales promotion value chain, and so on, came to be created. So outdated roles need to be replaced by updated roles. Then we have updated processes that need to come in place of outdated process. As products and services get updated, the processes cannot remain steeped in the past. They need to be modified, they need to be reinvented wherever required and aligned to the new situation. And most of the processes that are thus renovated have to have digital backbone. Outdated people. It doesn't mean that people are irrelevant. People are as relevant in new systems as they were in the old systems. But new people have to emerge from the existing people in terms of new skills. And the skills upgradation of the existing people is one of the foremost tasks of leadership. Then we have metrics. The metrics as measured earlier are outdated. Traditional performance management systems and metrics are of little use when products, services and businesses are evolving continuously. So there are two aspects of organizational redesign. One pertaining to roles and processes which could be handled and should be handled analytically. There are two other aspects of organizational redesign relating to people and metrics or performance management which need to be handled empathetically. Therefore, organizational redesign has to be a blend of technology and emotion. The structures need to support the new strategy, while the new processes have to be analytical and empathetic to support change management. Why there should be a need for organizational redesign? We have covered this in the earlier case studies, and we clearly demonstrated that organizational redesign is the primary vehicle for business redefinition and business growth. But let's capture the same spirit in a different way. Every organization design, in my opinion, is an organizational redesign. Most organizations, whether startups or additions to established organizations, tend to be created, unfortunately, without much thought on strategy-linked principles. The most common start is a functional organization structure for a mono product or mono business start. But then we can move, as I said, from functional organization to three different types of organization. Product organization, which could be in terms of geographies or in terms of product lines. An SBU organization, which is in terms of divisions or conglomerates with specific P&L responsibility. There could also be the matrix organization, which is a global corporation, multinational in its context, fully networked with operations in different sites and different locations and nationalities. As companies grow through the expansion or diversification route, they encounter that organizations are no longer equipped to meet the demands of a rapidly evolving strategy. Because the environment is rapidly changing and strategy is rapidly evolving, but if the structure remains as it was, then there would be a dichotomy between structural reality and strategic aspiration. So what are the distinguishing practices of organizational redesign? You will be able to connect each of these distinguishing practices with the two examples of organizational redesign I dealt with in the previous two lectures. There are 5 aspects of technological behavior that are critical. A. Innovation. B. Perfection. C. Quality. D. Efficiency. And E. Effectiveness. These must permeate all the core functions of design, manufacture, and marketing. But we should also look at environmental empathy of our operations, social responsibility of business, and corporate governance of our corporation. These core values are also expressed in terms of certain other aspects of safety, health, environment, ethics, and compliance. These are all different ways of looking at ESG. All of these things need to be explicitly institutionalized through departments, through programs. They must be visible all across the organization under the ESG framework. How do you translate true customer centricity? I have given earlier an example that even though the industries are changing, what doesn't change is customer centricity. Banking could go digital, but still the customer is at the core. Healthcare could become robotized, but the patient is at the core. Automobiles may be electrified, may become autonomous, yet the core purpose is the mobility of the passenger or the cargo, and so on. So every new strategic initiative of a growth-oriented firm should focus on serving the customers in a deeper and a broader manner. An example of translating the core purpose of serving road transport operator by Ashok Leyland, a leading commercial vehicle manufacturer, is as follows. Customer centricity is at the core, driving these 6 strategies. 1. Broader product choice, from the smallest those to the biggest AVTR or avatar range of heavy-duty trucks, all across intermediate and medium commercial vehicles in the middle of the spectrum. Second, customer financing. Make sure that customer has the wherewithal to replace a truck by a new truck. So Hinduja Leyland Finance has come into being to support Ashok Leyland. Then genuine spare parts. That is, spare parts on whose durability and reliability and the perfect fit the customer can rely on. Lay parts. On-call, on-road service through Service Mandi, digitally connected, agile servicing and part support system. Driver telematics. This is one of the biggest digital improvements that Ashok Leyland made. That is, there is telematics capability in the truck and every driver can optimize his or her performance by the use of telematics, which is going to give him feedback in terms of the optimum way of running the truck given the operating conditions, which keep varying by the kilometer. People can save 15% of fuel by operating telematics appropriately. This scheme is called iAlert. Then electric vehicle and mobility solutions as a complete new initiative. Switch is the electric vehicle mobility provider and OHM is the mobility company that is providing mobility as a service in the electric vehicle field. In the paradigm of true customer centricity, the firm co-creates and co-experiences the product or service with the customer, all through the product usage spectrum and time horizon. The touch points with the customer are not limited only to the dealer point. The touch points with the customer occur all through the value chain of a product. True customer centricity must therefore mean genuine customer companionship and experience sharing all the way. There is a strategy, there is this execution, and we all know that after the execution we get results. But for the strategy to be effectively executed, we need 2 things on the part of leaders. 1, advocacy. 2, awareness. According to research, leaders and managers excel at being a member of the 2 groups. One group is that of visionaries and strategists. The other group is one of taskmasters, execution drivers. This is the second group. These 2 groups are based on predominant skill and aptitude that characterizes the people, the leaders in those groups. However, those who excel equally in both sets, that is the visionaries and strategists as a group and execution driven people as the second group. Those who excel equally in both sets tend to be fewer. Communication between the 2 groups and exchange of best practices and even roles could help enhanced and more effective leadership. Because strategy is often taken up as a very confidential process among senior leaders, the outcome of the strategy process, which is a strategic plan, remains weakly circulated. I have advocated in earlier lectures that strategic plan will be very effective when there is inclusivity, when there is ownership across the organization. However, in most organizations, it doesn't happen that way, unfortunately, which is the reason why although strategic plan gets published over time, its execution remains weak and it takes place in fits and starts. So advocacy of this strategic plan and awareness of the plan by the larger organization is key to effective execution. That's where the leadership capability in advocacy and in enhancing awareness and also the organization's ability to provide feedback and assume ownership through awareness become important. The 5 pillars of strategic execution are described in this graphic. 1. Strategy creation. Realistic assumptions will always lead to robust strategy. Strategic planning, vertical and horizontal alignment, which we talked about. I would also say vertical and horizontal inclusivity that would lead to shared and co-owned strategic plan. Performance management, where accountability signifies effectiveness. Fourth, communication, wherein we have two-way communication. It could be between network partners such as suppliers and the firm, dealers and the firm, or departments or people within the department, and so on. So bilateral communication amongst all the stakeholders and amongst all the employees is crucial to support the strategy. Finally, organizational capacity, that is, the resource shortage will lead to ineffective strategic plan, whereas resource adequacy will lead to effective strategic plan. Slow execution is considered a handicap by almost 70% of the executives surveyed by a research firm Gartner. But the reasons, the causes are well within their realm, and the solutions also are well within their realm. Insufficient visibility and control, firefighting mentality, employee change fatigue are the reasons if a good concept and construct strategic execution is put in place by the leaders. And the 5 points which I have told now are part of that 5-pillar framework. Leaders have the responsibility to lay out the path for generation and utilization of resources for the execution of the strategic plan. Without assured organizational capacity, even the best of strategy would be ineffectively executed. It is not sufficient to lay out grand plans. They also must be supported by realistic resources. That is the leader's responsibility, not the down the line operator's responsibility. How do we convert business strategy into activity? There are two specific concepts which we need to think of. We need to think of business strategy and we need to think of business model. Every business to be successful requires a sound business strategy and a sound business model, both of which are intertwined with each other. Let's understand what is business strategy. Business strategy is a set of approaches to enable a company to achieve its vision and goals. Product market expansion, diversification, integration, mergers and acquisitions, core and non-core products, or core and non-core services, these are all covered by business strategy. But business model is something which converts business strategy into operational results. It is a method adopted by a company to earn revenues and profits. The same method of sales could be carried out through several means: franchising, consigning, outsourcing, branding, bundling, leasing, accounting, reverse auctioning, cash on delivery, sell on credit, and so on. For example, a company which is interested in real estate portfolio could buy property and rent it out. But the same real estate strategy can be implemented buying the properties but leasing back to the original owners, because they know how to run the property well and get assured income. So there are different business models that can be adopted within the canopy of the same business strategy. But the connectivity between the two is that business strategy needs a business model for execution, and business model needs to work within a business strategy framework to fulfill the company's business strategy, business intent, and business targets. These have to move in alignment. Interconnectivity and alignment are essential for the business strategy and business model to be successful. Now, the characteristics of business strategy are different from the characteristics of business model. Business strategy comprises functional strategies or product related strategies. We can have product strategy, technology strategy, operations strategy, financial strategy, marketing strategy, regulatory strategy, human resource strategy, and so on. But we don't have business model called product business model, technology business model, etc. Business model is one which runs the business. So there is a difference. Business strategy is directional and focused. It is milestones driven, and it is essential for sustainable competitive advantage. But business model is very operational and quantitative. It is metrics driven. Whereas milestones govern the implementation and monitoring of business strategy, metrics cover the implementation of the business model. Business model is essential for day-to-day business results, whereas business strategy is essential for long-term growth horizon and long-term pathway towards futuristic position. Successful businesses obviously require well-aligned and integrated business strategy and business model. Typically, the first year of any business plan serves as the annual budget of the company. It is key to resource allocation, performance management, and monitoring based on the business strategy. I talked about business strategy being an amalgam of various functional strategies. They look different here, but they're all interconnected. For example, a product cannot be developed without components being made available by the operations team. An operations team cannot produce a product unless the product technology is understood by the manufacturing team, and also products are transferred in an appropriate manner from the laboratory to the large-scale manufacturing setup. There cannot be good product and good process without technology being state of the art. Finally, sales and marketing has the ability and also the responsibility to convert the products into revenue. And in doing so, we rely on human resources throughout all our functions, and we depend on resources to do the first start of the working capital cycle, but thereupon we have to provide the resources to the company in terms of our cash flows from the commercial transactions. So business strategy of a firm, though delineated and detailed in respect of different functional strategies, is one interconnected network of strategies. Business strategy of a firm typically addresses questions such as what is the business of the firm, who are the firm's customers and what are the markets, what are the products that the firm must offer, how should the products be manufactured, where should the products be manufactured, what should be the cost and price of our products, and how will the firm accomplish viability. Now, understanding the customer needs and fulfilling them with empathy is the foundation of a firm's existence. The whole construct of design thinking is based on this. Product strategy must be based on technological and scientific competencies of a firm. A firm cannot choose a product which cannot be backed by its science and technology. That is essential for corporate success. Firms also must have clear socio-economic purpose. Pure economics won't work. We need to have combined socio-economics, responsible consumption, responsible wealth generation, equitable distribution of wealth constitute the core of the firm's governance in these days and in coming days as well. So how do we define the business of the firm? We can view the business of the firm from different frameworks. This is an example which I have given earlier, but it is very appropriate to recall this example here. The broader the business definition, the more degrees of freedom the firm could have in setting and pursuing its vision, mission, and goals. Let's say a manufacturer of vehicles thinks of itself as a vehicle manufacturer. Then its business is nothing but manufacture of commercial vehicles. And if the value chain is expanded, as it should be, it is design, manufacture, and delivery of commercial vehicles and all the supporting activities. We talked about a primary value chain and a supportive value chain, if you recall. That's what works here. But you can see yourself as not just a commercial vehicle manufacturer, but as someone who has a vital stake in road transportation. Therefore, you may be providing transportation network also, in which case road transportation is your larger business. You may also be looking at yourself as a transportation player, in which case multimodal transport could be your business. And finally, you may say that whichever way a product moves or a person moves, or whichever way an information comes to you, that is the mobility of the person or the purpose or the delivery item, could be the business of the company. When you have these kinds of broadest dimensions, then the business canvas improves and the options available for the firm to play become many more. But one cannot be randomly everywhere. One has to choose where one wants to compete based on the strengths and weaknesses as well as opportunities and threats, which we considered in one of the earlier lectures. Too broad a definition will make the firm lose its focus, while too narrow a definition may make the firm lose out opportunities which are developing. In fact, it will make the firm impervious to changing environmental trends. What is the business product nexus? The way you define your business leads to the way you configure your products. This is the arrow of transportation. When you decide that you would be in road transportation, you can choose the type of products with which you will meet the road transportation need. Light commercial vehicle, medium, heavy, passenger, goods, chassis or fully built. And somebody will come up with the point of view that between light and medium, There could be an intermediate range of commercial vehicles which could be newly engineered and can be offered. Each has a different set of customer needs to fulfill, even if technologically some commonality would exist. The target customers, the target marketplace, this target segmentation may vary depending upon the customer need and the product definition. So the definition of the business, the definition of the industry, the definition of the product are all interlinked. The product strategy drives the marketing strategy on one hand and the operation strategy on the other. I verily believe that product strategy is a key enabler of corporate success, because by driving R&D strategy and by driving operation strategy, it makes the interaction between the customer and the firm mutually beneficial. A startup has got even greater responsibility. It needs to define its business very carefully and pragmatically. Typically, a startup does not have industry boundaries, as we know. It doesn't operate within the framework of an existing industry. In fact, its core drive is to disrupt an existing industry. Therefore, the correct identification of the problem and the commensurate creative solution is the one which drives startup success. Let's say a startup wants to be in smart wearable business. Then the questions galore. Smartwatch, smart glass, smart apparel, smart diagnostic, smart pen, smart anything. Each has a different set of customer needs to fulfill, but each also would have certain differentiation in terms of design and manufacturing, but also certain commonalities. Again here, the target customers, the target marketplace and their segmentation will vary significantly depending upon the customer need and product definition. A startup doesn't need an elaborate business plan as a mainstream company would need. One right product can help the startup create not only a new business but also a whole new industry around the new product that has been successful and disruptive. Let me take the example of smart glass or smart spectacle to illustrate how business planning can be done, how business strategy can be done, how business modeling can be done. Smart glass is a specialized tech-based spectacle with specific objectives other than visual support. This glass helps me read. This helps me correct my short-term vision as well as long-term vision. The normal spectacles market itself is therefore segmented depending on the usage and esteem factors. Esteem factors based on the type of the glass, the shape, the form factor, the type of the frame and the brand. Traditional eyewear can be specified in terms of the 4 classifications. Vision correction, again not visible but very important, contact lenses. Vision protection, sunglasses, and fashion accessory, which doesn't have any visual correction or visual protection purpose, but it's just used as a fashion accessory. But these could be intermixed as well. This is the grouping of regular eyewear market segments. But when you look at the smart eyewear, there are 3 types of functions for smart eyewear. One is an improving function, which is effectiveness and usage, as it could be for traditional eyewear. But the improvements themselves would take place through dynamic technological interventions. Second, enhancing both functionality and experience. And the third one is inventing new segments and new applications. A smart glass, being a novel, technologically differentiated product, can become a disruptive product as well. So to be able to cater to this need of developing a smart glass, the startup would need to understand the industry structure, the scale, the segments, regions, players and drivers of the existing industry, so that there could be certain basic foundational perspectives of where and how disruption could occur. So when you look at scale, you have segments, applications, regions, players. And when you look at the drivers of market, you have demographics, vision problems, weather conditions, esteem uses. Weather conditions impact sunglass type of eyewear. Esteem uses impact high brand value and unique form factor spectacles. Vision problems, generally depending upon the nature of the vision problem, you require different types of lenses and different types of frames. Demographics enables all of these things. How do you quantify the demand and application segment wise? It could be done over a 5 or 10-year period, so that the potential of a disruptive technology is properly understood. You have total demand for spectacles. It comes from global demand, segmented, but it is expressed through products and converted into sub-product wise demand. And this total demand is split into vision correction, sunglasses, fashion accessory. And vision correction again is split into spectacles and contact lens demand. Fashion accessory again into plain and luxury. Sunglasses also could have its own divisions if you delve deep into that. A smart glass, like any startup product, must be developed to solve specific customer problem. There is no point in giving an architecture which is for vision correction for someone who wants to be taking spectacle for fashion accessory. So while the product has to be disruptive, unless you understand the underlying technology, you would not be able to implement it as a disruptive technology. The evolution of a simple spectacle into a smart spectacle demonstrates the nuanced layering of technology over the basic product platform. Normal glasses have only two components: the end product, which is the complete spectacle, which comprises the sub-product, namely the frame and the lens. Whereas the smart glasses are a different type of combination. You have the end product smart glasses, of course, but the subsystem comprises two systems. One is the optical system, as we know, and the second is operating system, which is novel and which is new to this class of products. It is the disruptor in the spectacles market. Optical system also is not just lenses. It will have displays, it will have cameras, it will have lenses. Operating systems could have frames with CPU processing capability. It would have sensors, wireless modules, processors and batteries. You can see the complexity that has been built into a smart glass vis-a-vis a simple normal glass. It demonstrates the power of convergence of innovative technologies. The technology that is deployed drives user segmentation and customer base. A spectacle may seem to be a simple product, but as I have illustrated, multiple products can emerge based on technology. If it is a normal glass, we can have prescription glasses which are of short distance type or long distance type. You can have bifocals which are plain or UV protected. You can have looks which are clear, tinted or dark. This is as much as one goes in terms of segmentation and appealing to different customer bases in respect of normal glasses. But when you look at smart glasses, you can see that the whole scope gets explosive. It grows exponentially. The industrial uses, just to quote 4 or 5 examples, relate to engineering, manufacturing, logistics, infrastructure, shipping, exploration, and so on. When it comes to the individual use, it is not just the vision. Vision could be of any of these varieties on the left side, but in addition, you can get content. And services could be again enormous: education services and entertainment services. Today, smart spectacles constitute less than 5% of global eyewear market. But if these kinds of changes become mainstream commercial products, then they could reach 50% share in the years to come. Will they completely substitute normal glasses? They may not. In fact, the market may expand so much that both normal glasses with current volumes and smart glasses with equivalent volumes could coexist, because smart glasses perform certain functions which are incremental, which are additive to the usage of glasses by the current stream of users. This tells us that a business plan is built on 4 core product market themes: product dimension and market dimension, existing products, existing markets, new products, existing markets, existing products, new markets, new products and new markets. You can see the growth planning for a smart wearable take place on all the 4 dimensions. The more granular the product market grid is, the more effective the business plan of that new product can be. And that drives the phased growth of a company in an elaborate but very effective manner. So when you want to reach the customer, how do I reach the customer? The purchasing decisions and delivery options need to be developed into a marketing strategy. Will I do it like prescription eyewear? Will I do it like casual eyewear? Should I do it online? Should I do it offline? The more sophisticated healthcare product this smart eyewear becomes, the greater would be the regulatory hurdles as a medical device. And that would require clinical trials and FDA approvals before the product can be approved. So technology cannot be blindly and blithely incorporated in any product. We should also understand that the more technology we embed in a product, and therefore the more claims we make based on the technology, the more clinical hurdles we need to cross. It becomes a full-fledged medical device rather than a spectacle. So where to draw the line consistent with the company's strengths and opportunities, weaknesses and threats, and consistent with the need to be in the market with a new product is a strategic decision that a company needs to take in the business of smart wearables. I said that there are 4 core product market themes. I'll try to give another example on the product dimension and the market dimension. Existing products, existing markets. A beautiful, well-designed double-decker bus is an example. It tries to get higher level of penetration with similar technologies in similar markets. But when you look at existing products reaching new markets, you can think of oxygen transporters which can be hauled across the continents in emergencies. Therefore, these are application-oriented vehicles which create, on the basis of existing products, new markets. Then we can think of new products for the existing markets. Electric vehicles, huge electric vehicles which do intercity transportation for delivery chains, for logistics providers and companies such as Safeway and Walmart, Amazon. These are all new products for the existing markets. Finally, there could be new products for new markets, which is the whole concept of drones of different sizes, scales, which could bring in a revolution in transportation of cargo. The foundations of a growth-oriented business strategy are therefore laid by specific product market initiatives. We have seen that this grid is applicable for something as technologically novel as Smart Plus and is equally available and applicable for an established product such as an automobile. So this product market theme must be embedded in our strategic thinking for us to address the business plan, business strategy requirements of any company. So with this, we come to the end of the session on strategy execution. We have covered a number of topics with several case studies, and I hope these studies and these constructs have given you a good in-depth feeling of the domain of strategy execution. We will meet again next week on different theme and on different topics. Thank you.